value that we can add as an association. With that, I would like to introduce our next session. This session is a panel discussion on the topic Unlocking the Secret of Programmatic Advertising. And for the same, I would like to welcome our esteemed moderator, Mr. Mehta, Head of Business India, Cadreon. Welcome. Mr. Abhinav Dubey, Head Digital and Performance Marketing, Aegon Life Insurance. Ms. Richa Khera, Head Digital Marketing and CLM, KFC India. Mr. Kuntal Banerjee, Head Digital Marketing, Maruti. And Mr. Arjun Satya, Co-founder, M360. We welcome all of you, and I would now request Mr. Mehta to please take over the session.
Right. Thank you so much, Garima. Thank you. I think I've as part of my conversation, I was just written down the introduction part of it, and I think you've taken care of that. So thank you so much for that. I think it saves some bit of time there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you are. I sincerely hope and wish that all of you are keeping safe and doing well in the current situation. Right. I take this opportunity to thank IAMAI and We Commission for arranging India Affiliate Summit 2020. Congratulations on making something like this happen, in prevailing situation. It's not as straightforward, right? Connection issues. Now people have started going back to work, all of that. And even in the situation, putting a show together is commendable. Thank you and great job. With that, like Garima mentioned, we have Ms. Richa from KFC, Mr. Kuntal from Maruti, Mr. Abhinav from Aegon Life, and Mr. Arjun from M360, part of Times Internet digital publishing platform. Myself, Paras, I take care of programmatic requirements for IPG here in India. I welcome all my panelists, fellow panelists. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining us. Thank you thank you so much for that. Before we start, right, I was just thinking about it. It's the introduction of programmatic conversation in a summit like this, right, which is predominantly around affiliates. It's an interesting and a very encouraging one, right? The times have come where many of us do not look at programmatic only as a branding or an awareness channel, right? We also consider as how do we drive performance through programmatic, right? It has the potential to deliver results beyond just impression, reach, frequency, and clicks, right? But the general notion still is that programmatic is only for upper funnel. It has very little to contribute to lower funnel actions and so on and so forth, right? What we're going to attend for next about 35 odd minutes is to try and go through what we're going to attempt to do is to try and address some of these points in next about 35 to 40 minutes. And keep last 5-10 minutes for any questions that our viewers, our people who have really taken out time to join us, and we kind of address some of those questions, right? With that, I would like to invite Ms. Richa to share her thoughts on why programmatic for performance, right? When we have other performance channels which can drive really intent-driven actions, right? So why programmatic? Richa, your thoughts, please.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Paras. That's a very interesting start to this conversation. So I'm going to answer this in two parts, basically. And as a retail business, KFC, of course, is both online and offline. We have a large presence across 100 plus cities in India with 500 restaurants. So I'm going to take. I'm going to break this down into two parts, online and the offline part of it, the physical and the digital business part of it. So, as a category, we're a very impulse category, which means consumers are looking for decisions to make, on what to eat, perhaps, 3 times a day or even more than that. So the number of occasions that the consumers have is far higher, right, versus any other category. And also, while they're making these decisions in regular times, they're also actively searching out where to go. Where do I go out this weekend, or where do I go? It's a Friday feeling, or I'm bored midweek. Where is the place? What is that place do I head to? So, as a category, as a brand, we want to be mentally available, in the consumer's mind. We want to be available at these moments where consumers are indeed making those decisions on the fly. Also we want to drive salience and of course top of the mind, because it's almost like how do we remind the consumer that, hey, we are also here. why don't you walk in, or why don't you order online, or however you wish to access us as a brand. So the idea is to basically drive this incremental reach, and we already leverage social, we leverage display heavily. So the idea is to drive incremental reach across more platforms, using them to reach the consumer in a very effective way, to impact decision making at the times when people are indeed looking for decisions to make. It could be as high as 3 times a day, 4 times a day, as I said. So the idea is basically to drive more mental availability for the brand. That's how I look at it. Paris, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. I think so. Being present when people are hungry is the motto, and that's where really kind of programmatic really helps you, right? So that's the interesting one, right? So on that thought, right? Just building upon that. So while programmatic is fine, you have many DSPs through which you can run your campaigns and so on and so forth. End of the day, there are wall gardens, right? I mean, and that possibly holds true for almost all categories, right? You would probably be there when the consumer is surfing something on the internet, or seeing something on a social platform, or consuming something on OTT platform, right? So there are various places where you can really reach out to the consumer. So there are many such places. There are some of these places are walled gardens. So I'd like to invite Abhinav to probably share a few points or his view on the challenges that programmatic the challenges of programmatic in a walled garden ecosystem, and then how do you kind of map things together, right? Because in an insurance sector, right, people will not really buy immediately. They'll do their research and then kind of touch it. So over to you, Abhinav, please.
So thanks a lot, Paras, and good afternoon, everyone, and all my esteemed panelists. So if we talk about the walled garden ecosystem, I think we all know that it's mainly controlled by 2 to 3, top companies, which are almost controlling the 70 to 80% of the ad space right now. And these companies are the ones which possess a lot of data, and which we marketers rely a lot in order to run our marketing campaigns. Now, however, the challenge with this comes is that these companies don't share the data easily with other platforms. So one of the biggest challenge or problem faced is how do we cooperate, or how do we link two platforms together for data share. See, another challenge with these kind of walled garden companies, what we call is, these companies have very different set of tools. For example, you know, uh, we can take a video view. So some companies, they count 15 seconds as one video view. Another company counts 5 seconds as a video view. So again, there's a lot of data mismatch, and it kind of creates problem for the marketers, like which data to rely on, because obviously it will give a very skewed picture. Uh, Again, coming onto digital marketing, where we use cookies a lot, and cookies is one of the primary sources of collecting data. Now, all these platforms again have a very different set of tools how they collect cookies, and at the end of the day, when we try to match the data, it kinds of doesn't match and gives a wrong attribution, and which provides a challenge in mapping the exact data. So one of the biggest challenges which I feel which is in front of programmatic from these kind of wall garden companies that we call is the lack of transparency and the lack of data or the info sharing, which is kind of limiting the performance of other programmatic companies. And secondly, when we are talking about the phasing out of cookies, and there's a lot of talk in the town that cookies will be phased out. So these companies or these other programmatic companies will have to figure out the ways, how can they make their unknown customer into a known customer, because they heavily rely on cookies. So yeah, this is what my views are.
Interesting. You kind of highlighted that wall gardens, and each one of them have different ways of measuring different events when you're delivering an ad, and even going forward once cookie kind of the importance of cookie kind of reduces, then kind of how do we move things forward when it comes to programmatic, right? And that's where I think the most of us would have probably heard of it, right? The whole so-called data-driven marketing and automation, and how do we kind of put things together and so on. So taking the conversation forward, right? Arjun, I would like to come to you to kind of get your viewpoint on, while all these things are happening and the ecosystem is constantly evolving, right? How does one take advantage of automated data-driven marketing and possibly in real time?
Hi, Paras. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon to all. I guess like programmatic advertising was any which ways the next iteration of how the advertising will go about, especially in terms of, especially when we talk about return on advertising spends, whether it is how many clicks we are getting, how many conversions we are getting, and how many installs we are getting, and also metrics beyond all those actions as well. Like, let's say in case of a music portal, how many songs were listened after an install. So marketers are always looking for a metric beyond a traditional metric that we see in advertising. So that's where I think programmatic advertising is indispensable, but it is definitely challenged by like bunch of wall gardens that we have. And I think both at the both side of the supply chain, publishers and advertisers will have to create their own sort of edge and advantage over the walled garden. I think first of them being like PII data. So I feel that PII data is something that resides within the publishing ecosystem. So they can basically cross-match a lot of attributes that they're capturing, or the kind of attributes that they want from, let's say, walled garden onto their platform itself. So we see a lot of publishers and a lot of SSPs creating these kind of PII-based solution to match data of these walled gardens. And also, as the next iteration, I think because we'll be harvesting a lot of first-party data, the aspect of DCO will come into picture a lot. So we are seeing DCO in travel industry and in e-commerce industry, especially like the creators are dynamically optimized in terms of what is your travel destination and what kind of product you look at. So marrying the first-party data in real time and spitting out the best possible ad for that particular user will drive a lot of those metrics. And also, like, programmatic advertising hasn't like reached the scale that it intended to. So there's like a lot of areas there's a lot of technologies to be involved. Things like automated bidding, automated setting of frequency capping. So while we saw a large adoption of programmatic advertising like 4 to 5 years back, it has slightly slowed down. But I think with AI and other things coming to the picture, the entire supply chain will be a lot more automated, a lot more accountable, and eventually automated buying will be the way forward for a bunch of at least performance marketing.
Thanks, Arjun. I think interesting that you mentioned about AI and ML, right? And both of them are pretty close to almost all of. I mean, we hear that almost on daily basis, right? Some of the other platforms that we use is using some sort of machine learning or a tiny bit of AI, artificial, to kind of deliver the KPIs or the objectives that we set to achieve, right? So while machines do all the work, all the heavy lifting of saying that, hey, go and get me clicks at the lowest possible CPC or whatever have you, get me leads at with the best possible conversion ratio and so on and so forth, right? Something that I think machines still have a very long way to go is that while we are doing whatever that we are doing in terms of reaching out to our potential consumers and so on, they still don't understand the feeling of how to build trust, right? And to have that personal connect with the consumer, right? So that the consumer or the messaging that we're delivering, whether it's a regular messaging that we're delivering through a regular banner or a video, all the way doing dynamic content optimization, DCO, and delivering very specific messaging to consumers, whichever industry we may be in. So there is this thing which machines really cannot deliver, which is trust and the personal connect, right? So I would like to invite Kuntal to share his viewpoint on, is data-driven marketing better in building trust and connect with consumers, right? And if that's the way it is, then how is it helping? This is your experience.
Hi, Paras. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon, everybody. So Maruti started programmatic advertising way back in 2017. We carried out the first POC, and post that since 2018. I mean, I mean, 80% of our spends are on.
Kuntal, we're unable to hear you.
Celebration of somebody has a celebration of wedding, somebody has a celebration of getting promoted in office. So customer doesn't follow a standard pattern of purchase, like he will buy only during Diwali or he will buy only during the Khera. So it's very important to know your audience correctly. Although you might start at a certain level of affinity or a demographic targeting, but unless and until you know your customer well, where is he going? And this can only be possible if you're chasing him, if you're collecting his data, plowing it back into your cohort and trying to optimize that further so that your targeting is very, very sharp. For example, during the COVID time, the usage pattern of customers completely changed. They were more focused on social media, on Facebook. They were more focused on essential commodities. They were more focused on news channels. We are a large ticket size product company. So if I start sending messages on buy my car in the month of April and May, I mean, I will be heavily trolled, right? And there were some companies who were heavily trolled trying to sell their product. So we knew our customer well. So we empathize with the customer. We gave them time. We did CSR initiatives. We gave them tips that if your vehicle is standing in your garage, how do you maintain them so that it starts after 20 days? What basic precautions you take? So our entire messaging completely changed, and it was only possible because we were using along with DV360, GAP360. So it is extremely important that although you might start at a certain point in program, but continuously you have to optimize your cohort, know your cohort better, and then fine tune your messaging. So I mean, programmatic is absolutely data driven marketing, and if you don't rely on data, I think with your gut feel and market intuitiveness, then I think you are not doing justice to programmatic marketing. So I think I completely agree that it has to be a data.
Right, Kuntal. So I think some interesting points over here, right? Like Arjun mentioned about using PII to non-PII. How do we map that, and then how do we use that for our communication to the client? And like you mentioned about connecting the data, and data could be audiences, data could be just events that we report or record in our ad selling reports and so on, right? And also understanding empathizing with the consumer, right? I am a Maruti owner, right? And I remember, I think sometime in April or so, I received a message saying that, hey, while you're not really driving your vehicle, please ensure that your handbrake is not locked, right? You put it in the gear while it's in park, but don't put the hand lock on, right? You unlock that, right? So such messages really help us take care of our vehicles in a nicer way, right? So that's basically about not just reaching out to consumers through banners or videos or the usual ways, but it's also about how are we connecting with our consumers through emails or SMSs, and how are we integrating the whole ad tech and martech piece together to really drive that experience for our potential consumers or existing consumers, and then what are we talking about in terms of what care they should take and so on and so forth, right? So that's an interesting one. So we have multiple data points coming in from not just digital channels, but also from our the interaction that we record from emails or SMSs, or even for that matter, call center incoming calls that we have, to our customer executives and so on, right? And I think that's where I think Abhinav's work kind of gets a little tricky. So Abhinav, in a scenario, in the industry that you represent, right? It's not just about reaching out to consumers digitally and then getting them to convert for, buy your product. It's also about once they've bought the product, what kind of services are you providing, and so on and so forth, right? So in a complex setup like this, right, how do you measure success? Because is it just converting the user, or once the user is converted, what kind of experiences you're providing? What are the things that you look for?
See, if we talk about BFSI products or life insurance products, see, these are very different from your lifestyle products or your day-to-day ones, which a customer just buys and consumes. So these products requires a lot of trust, and the customers also expects it from the company. So for example, in insurance, we have a persistency ratio. It's a metric which we use to judge like how our customers are continuing with the product. So for example, you might buy an insurance policy on the first go, or you might buy a savings account in the first go. But are you using it in the coming years? So are you paying up the premiums and all? So here, so persistency ratio becomes a criteria for us, to define the success. Okay, if I have acquired X number of customers in my first year, how many of them are going into the second year and coming back and paying the premium? So here, higher the persistency rate for me, it shows that okay, I'm doing a good job in solving the customer queries, and they still trust me, and they want to continue with the brand. So this becomes a success criteria for me, right? Uh, I don't know about other industries. I mean, they might be having different criteria for judging, but this is one of the most important criteria for insurance industry. For a bank, if you take, you have to see that what kind of deposits you're getting in an account. Are customers actively using your account or not? Are they interacting with the banking products or not? So these kind of metrics become a success measure for BFSI sector, and especially for insurance. It is the customer persistency score, or the ratio that we track on a yearly basis.
Right. Interesting, right? Because we are not buying insurance just in case if someone has to encash it once, if God forbid something happens to the person, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting to kind of measure the success just beyond an impression or a click or a lead, right? To saying that what is the kind of experience that you're providing to the consumer, and how are you measuring the success of the lead or the conversion that has happened on a platform like that, right? That leaves me with a thought process, right? That okay, I've reached out to the right set of customer. I've pursued that customer through DC or various other mechanisms to say that, hey, maybe you know what, at this moment maybe that's what you're looking at, and maybe this is the right product for you. So you kind of entice the user to apply for that or buy that product, right? And then once the person has really bought the product, what's the kind of experience that you provide to the consumer through the various levels of engagement, either through email or SMS or a phone call, and so on, right? But in an industry which Richa represents, right, where I think, well, like she mentioned earlier, that top of the mind becomes an important one, and the second one is the incremental reach that you measure, right? How do you measure? How do you connect the performance with the revenue part of it, right? Because I may eat. I'm a Zinger burger lover. I really like that, right? I probably will eat once a week, for example, right? But it's not something that I will probably do it for lunch and for dinner as well, right? So how do you measure the performance with the kind of revenue that you generate?
Sure. Yeah, interesting, challenge to solve. See, it's fairly easy on the online space, right? There are multiple ways to measure last click attribution. That's fairly common. Also, view through is important in a lot of cases because in our case also we look at a lot of first click interaction because, as I said, we do a lot of top of the funnel advertising. We're also product led. Okay, a lot of our campaigns, our communication that we do are essentially coming from our products which we might be launching now. These could be rebundles, these could be maybe a zinger burger like you mentioned. So we do a lot of this reminder through products, right? And we do a lot of top funnel advertising. It could be occasions, etc. It could be multiple things. Now it's also what we've seen is that social, for example, as a channel, it heavily influences people when they even walk into the store. They will say, hey, I saw the ad, say 2 days back or 3 days back, but I took another 2-3 days to walk into the restaurant whenever I got the time. Or last click attribution, as I said, is the most easy part of doing that. So it's easy to do this on the online piece. We do that fairly thoroughly. We also look at data driven attribution. However, where we're also putting a lot of energy and efforts are on the online to offline piece. Basically, how do we track how many people are walking into the store? So we've started to track store visits, which of course is a fairly new metric on a lot of programmatic platforms. It's not as accurate perhaps, but it's just a start, just an indication to see how things are going. Perhaps it works in relativity, like one platform versus another. How do you stack them up together? While those are media optimization decisions, we also do a lot of local and geo targeted advertisements. They could range from carousel type ads. They could range from ads running on Google Maps and a lot of those local ads and newer formats which are emerging for retail brands. We run a lot of those, and what actually helps us is basically we actually have a strong CRM system which runs. So basically, if somebody walks into the restaurant, we also have the cashier collect the consumer details, whoever is willing to share them. So we have the consumer details. So once the consumer is transacting, we finally know that the loop is getting closed. Now, putting all this together right from the first interaction to the last interaction is where all the energy is. So it's not an easy piece of work because different systems, your behavior data is sitting in some other system, your transaction data is sitting in another system. But of course, if done well, if these things come together, the transaction level data can get connected to the behavior level data, and of course you can track it back to how and when the ad was served. And of course, over years we also do marketing mix modeling to get a sense of what's happening. But that's of course those are large ticket things that we do. But as I said, CRM actually plays a really important role.
Right. That's honestly, I think it's while programmatic to some of us sound like a nuclear science, but that's what you just mentioned is quite logical, right? How would you progress as human race? Also, we progress naturally, right? And if the same is the case when it comes to the kind of marketing activities that we carry out and how do we measure that, right? So the important outcome of if I have to just note down in one part is while of course you innovate and try out newer formats and new places or newer touch points through which you can connect with your consumer, the most important part is what are the attribution models that you're following, right? And if those models are really helping you drive the performance, right, and the impact of the money that that you're spending on the outcome, right? On the attribution model, right? I would like to take a point of view from Kuntal, right? Now, the category that Kuntal represents, right? It's not something which I'll take a decision in like 30 minutes. I want to buy a new Maruti Brezza. I'm not going to do that, right? There are many things involved in that, right? Am I eligible for a loan or not? Do I have the money to pay upfront right now and at this moment or not? At what moment am I going to get the delivery of my vehicle, right? Which color? Is it available or not? There are so many things. Is Brezza the right option? What are the competitors? So a person does a lot of research when it comes to buying a vehicle. I don't know if we do that kind of research, even buying homes for all we care, right? But when it comes to buying vehicles, we do a lot of research. We go to multiple places. We go to online portals. We do Google search. We ask our friends and so on and so forth, right? So there are many touch points when it comes to a vehicle as an option, right? So in a situation like this, right, Kuntal, if you share your views on is view through attribution model a good way to go about doing it? And if view through is a good model, then would you give credit to all your touch points equally, or would you then depend on basis historic data or some other touch points or any other knowledge that you have as you would have gathered over a period to say that here's the right model that I should probably look at when it comes to programmatic to search and the whole GMP thing that you mentioned about as well, right? So how do you go about doing that?
For knowledge of everyone, for knowledge of everyone. There are many like or taking a test drive. Have become, for example, asking relatives are can be asked on Facebook, or it can be on Quora, it can be on WhatsApp. So taking reference on that on WhatsApp and
Kuntal, I think you have internet connection issue. Maybe if you want to switch off video and just speak, I think that hopefully should solve the problem. Super, super. Thank you so much, Kuntal. Yes, sir. Kuntal, you're audible.
Yeah. So even the remaining digitalized today. TV ads are being rapidly replaced by OTT platforms. Your references are through digital media like WhatsApp, Facebook, and test drives. You are giving virtual test drive through AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality. So as far as attribution is concerned, it becomes really complex because whatever you do digitally, the customer ultimately goes to a dealership, negotiates the finance there, and then onboards to decide on to which car he has to book or which car he has to buy. So although the 23 or 24 are digital touch point, but the last two, the customer conversion happens at the retail outlet. So, our experience shows that even in programmatic, 60% of spends should be on the upper funnel, 30% of spend should be on the middle funnel, and only 10% on the lower funnel. Now, in the upper funnel, uh, where the customer, I'm creating awareness or I'm reaching out to the customer, I think the videos create a huge impact because our own internal cross media studies with Google and Kantar shows that videos have 3.2 times the impact of a display ad, and in a awareness campaign, the mix of video with respect to display should be around 70 to 30%. So I personally believe that yes, view through attribution when I'm doing an awareness definitely plays a huge role because it shows that the customer is not only engaging with your content, but the very fact that a digital customer is very impatient. But if he's looking at your ad for more than 20 seconds or 25 seconds, then I think you have got it. The customer is believing in you. The customer has got tagged along with you. So I mean, our internal data shows that view through is a very important factor today in programmatic. But with respect to attribution, we work on a multi-touch attribution (NTA), where we use a gamification model, and 86% of the conversion happens through display and search. So this display can be GIF also. So we are not doing plain Jane display, but we are doing GIF display. So that is how we are going about the attribution.
Interesting, right? It sounds quite complex, but I think with the right set of tools, I think all of these are possible, right? So we have about 10 minutes or to go, right? But before I move on to my last question, and then we take on questions coming from our audiences, you know, this is my understanding and experience, right? So all of us have talked about how programmatic needs to be used, and it's not something which you put in your money and you get the outcome like that, right? There's a bit of a science and math that goes behind really understanding your consumer, what kind of communication you're going to have with your consumer, at what frequency, what touch points, whether it needs to be a display or a banner, a programmatic, non-programmatic, or you want to do a DCO, right? A very customized messaging, right? Or like Richa mentioned about, you know, the online and offline part of it, right? Maybe it's a little sketchy at this moment, but there is some bit of time and effort that needs to be put to try and understand how that kind of works, right? And I think that maybe holds true for Kuntal as well, right? Because the 25 touch points that he mentioned, right? The last two touch points eventually, at least as far as India is concerned, is still offline, right? So after doing the view through attribution and multi-touch attribution, whether that is really converting to business or not is something that's an important part. To end of it, I think it's basically about connecting multiple data points which are available to us, right? And what do we require for that? I think this is my understanding. What marketeers or in some cases maybe publishers, what they really need to invest in is some sort of a data lake, right? And that could be a combination of data coming in from your advertising, from organic channels, from paid channels, from your website, from any second party or third party data partnerships that you may have. A CRM becomes an important part, right, for most of the businesses today, right? Because that personal touch on, hey, you know, I hope you're all right, and here is something that, you know, some sort of communication which is more personalized, right? That becomes an important mix in the way we kind of communicate, right? So all of these coming together becomes like a giant programmatic ecosystem, right? So investment in data lake is one part of it. The second part is, like Arjun mentioned earlier, and I think Abhinav also mentioned, is what happens when cookies go off, right? In a couple of years, once Google decides to do away with cookie, are we ready for a situation like that, right? And what is our response to a world without cookie, and how do we still continue to, you know, work the way we want to work and deliver results for our clients, for our consumers, right? So that's broadly about how things need to possibly shape up to really drive performance when it comes to programmatic. It sounds difficult, but once you're into it, I think it's quite straightforward, right? So Arjun, on that point, right? You represent a platform, right? A tool of sorts, right? That basically puts things together, right, for publishers. So I would like to know your view on you know, when it comes to programmatic, right? What would you like to see improving in programmatic to drive better and faster performance, right? Whether it's cookieless world, whether it's integrating CRM data, whether it's integrating publishing related data to advertising, and see, you know, how that can be used, right? So what would you like to see improving in programmatic system?
Yeah, hi, Vash. So I think like all of the points that have been discussed throughout the webinar. So there are a couple of tranches of problem with programmatic advertising. One is the current ecosystem where we have like multi-touch attribution problem, offline to online attribution problem, and then what future holds for us in terms of cookieless world and consent management platform and legal frameworks like GDPR and CCP. So for current ecosystem, I think like if you look at things like multi-touch attribution and online to offline, I consider all these like an identity resolution problem, because there's a lot of data that is residing in separate silos or buckets that are to be married with a single identifier. So typically what involved that identifier is like an email or a phone number, which in turn can be used for the MarTech aspect of it, whether it is mailers and SMSs, for customer success, as it was discussed. But I think for everyone outside of those walled garden, there's a dire need for a identity resolution platform, as you said, like a data lake. So not everyone has like a PII or an email and phone number, so that they can marry all the browsers, all the devices, all the operating system against a single identifier and saying that, hey, this identifier is belonging to Bharat. So I think that is to be coupled with something called as probabilistic matching or probabilistic identification, and there are a lot of technology companies that are coming in this play which are solving this problem and saying that this person on Chrome browser in Delhi is same as this person on Firefox browser in a mobile, in an Android. So that kind of identity resolution will definitely help all the things that we discussed, whether it is through attribution, because if you are reaching out to a user through like a 25 touch point, there are a lot of views that are getting lost and a lot of money that is wrongly attributed to whether it is publisher or the walled garden itself. And also for offline attribution as well. If we are able to do any kind of probabilistic match, then the offline channel effectiveness will be more valuable. And this overall in turn impacts the return on advertising spend, which is the final metric that we all want to optimize in terms of marketing. For future, like because cookieless world is just about to come for all of us, as I said, that probabilistic match will still exist, and all these first-party data from, let's say, a particular website or an application is to be married to a first-party data or something else altogether with some probabilistic identifier, which may not be like a third-party cookie. So that's one way that the companies will and are gearing up for that particular world. And I think not only that, in, let's say, if we consider some markets like US, where the Safari is slightly more prominent as a browser. Safari is not supporting third-party cookie for quite some time right now, so they have solved all these problems. So I think cookieless world, we have to gear with like faster adoption of programmatic advertising with more data and AI-driven advertising into the picture, because I think we are still like putting a half step to what actually programmatic advertising could be. It is supposed to be totally automated. All identification of user across all touchpoints are to be defined. So that's one thing. And concluding on the contextual aspect of it, I think contextual is slightly deprioritized, especially with the advent of behavioral marketing. So we'll see, especially from publisher point of view, a lot of contextual targeting set coming into the programmatic foray, and because they are slightly more effective in terms of the user data, because there's a lot of chances of fraudulent data coming into the user behavior. The contextual will be a lot more transparent. You know what kind of inventory you will be reaching out to, and it's slightly less intrusive than behavioral targeting or retargeting. So I think we'll see a resurgence of contextual advertising, which happened in early 2000 with AdWords. So we'll see that, and the publishers will start investing a lot, and even companies will start investing a lot in contextual targeting set, whether it is keywords, entities, sentiment of the article, things like that.
Excellent. So I think we are a little time, but I'm just going to quickly take 2 more minutes. I'll take that liberty, right? To one, summarize, and to quickly get each one of my fellow panelists' viewpoint on one of the questions that's been posted here. The first part is, I think this is what we've been hearing since past 45 minutes. Is we are moving towards a world which we were in early 2000 when it comes to digital advertising, personalization through email, SMSs, but not in a manner where we disregard the privacy of our consumers. With all privacy things in place, we're going to probably use contextual way of reaching out to a consumer. We're gonna do some bit of Martech is nothing but like combination of emails and SMSs and how we kind of use that effectively, keeping our privacy concerns into consideration and so on. So it's good to see we are going back in time, but with more of automation, more of knowledgeable way of doing it, keeping privacy in place. There's one interesting question, Garima, if I can take one more minute, and maybe I'll just reach out to each one of our panelists for a quick one-liner. The question is, just give me a second, I'm just reading through it. What are the limitations of programmatic buying? While we've talked about programmatic is all good, fantastic, superb, this is how we can do it. What are the limitations? Richa, one quick line.
Sure, I think challenges would be some bit of lack of traceability, brand safety.
Okay.
Two of these, yeah.
Traceability and brand safety. Kuntal, your point of view, please. Brand safety and placement, traceability. Abhinav, your point of view, please.
I think programmatic will still take a lot of time to become your frontline performance marketing channel. So there's a lot of journey to come for the channel.
Right. Arjun.
I think identity resolution, that's one. And second, empathizing with user in terms of what they actually want to buy rather than like bombarding them with a lot of ads. That is something that's yet to be solved.
Excellent. So we have the final words from our panelists on the challenges and how programmatic still can help them drive performance. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, my fellow panelists. Thank you so much for taking our time once again. I hope to catch up with each one of you once things go back to normalcy and once we are back in our offices, maybe for a quick dinner or something. That's on me. Hopefully next time when I'm in Delhi. Or whichever place of India where we can try and catch up. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Thank you, Garima, and thanks IMA.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you to all our panelists for this great session. We will soon be back with yet another exciting session coming up. Meanwhile, I would request the audience to please visit our exhibitor space, and please do also check out the leaderboard on the platform to know on updates of our various contests. Thank